Giant shelved the old 29-inch Trance half a decade ago. It wasn't a bad bike, but nobody shed a tear when it went away. So when it was resurrected in time for this year's Bible, we were a little skeptical about how it would perform. We shook it out on the trails of southwest Utah, and were very surprised with what we found.
We haven't seen a Trance 29 for a while. It was like the Fruita Bible since we saw one last.
That was what, 5 years ago?
Something like that.
What happened? They went down the 27.5 row for a while, right? Where they weren't making any 29 bikes.
Yeah,
they went hard down the 27.5 row. That was the only row.
And it might have been because of like the reaction that they had to the Trance 29, which the first one was probably the most boring bike I'd ever ridden. I mean, it just was so numbing. I mean, it got the job done, you'd cover ground great, but you just didn't feel anything. And I feel like this new Trance 29 is on the other end of that spectrum.
You're feeling something.
I don't think it's harsh though. I was actually, I mean, we're talking about a 115 millimeter travel bike here. I thought it was really impressively supple.
So this is a trippy thing though, right? So this is a 115 mil travel bike, but this particular model is their top of the line one. It's got this DVO suspension front and rear, which is very, very sophisticated suspension units. It's got carbon fiber wheels that are light, wide, 30 millimeter internal width, and it's got Minion tires on it. So it's kind of like, it's this cross-country-ish marathon identity with a bunch of burlier, go-fasty parts.
Yeah, and the whole lineup has burlier, go faster parts on it. None of them are spec'd as cross-country bikes.
Right.
But it is the case that this is the only DVO one in the line. Giant worked really extensively with them, going through like something like 100 tunes on the shock. So it is worth saying that our ride impressions are somewhat limited in that we haven't ridden any of the Fox suspended bikes.
Got that. But so where does this bike sit in the spectrum of like, is this a aggressive trail bike with limited travel? Is it more of the marathon to all day trail type of machine? Like what do you see as its position? What kind of bike does it ride like to you?
It's a much more precision-oriented bike. I think it's something that is meant for somebody who likes to get power out of it when they push into it, likes to pick their lines carefully and have fun with them, because you're never going to get lost in this bike. So it's something that is like this, when we started seeing these reverse mullet trend bikes of shorter rear travel, longer front travel, where you have the travel to get you out of trouble, but you have the moderate suspension in the rear to let you really take control.
Yeah, it is a really controllable, precise feeling bike. I feel like I can get the front up whenever I want. I can move the bike from line to line really easily, and it likes to get in the air.
The Trance falls in between different suspension worlds. It has more travel than XC bikes generally do, but it's an inch or so shy of the travel found in today's Trail 29ers. But Giant's Maestro suspension is highly evolved, and it works with the custom-tuned DVO components to deliver a ride that defies the numbers.
The moderate amount of travel lends itself to that playfulness and control and everything, but often that leads to less small bump sensitivity, less big bump sensitivity, like less capability overall. This one, in my opinion, it has the small bump sensitivity of a bike with much more travel, but when I was hitting things harder, I was like, it has really well-controlled bottom out. Like, you're not really hitting anything harsh, but I'm not ready to say that it rides like a 130 or 140 bike.
No, I agree with you there. I think that it does feel like a superb 115 millimeters of travel, but it doesn't feel like this whole world of plush beyond that, or it feels like it has much more travel sensation. It to me feels like a tautly suspended, precise, like you both had kind of talked on some of the precision of being able to choose lines and ride it, a very precise kind of bike. It's a trip for me, and it's like, it's a combination of a bunch of things that I really like in a bike. Like the geometry is a little bit on the conservative side. It's a light frame with a really good rear suspension, a really nice fork on it, and light wheels with big, huge tires. And it kind of makes for this it's a recipe for a fun riding bike.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you guys. I actually think it does feel like a 130 bike in a lot of ways. I feel like it's got that off the top sensitivity. I don't think 130 bikes deal with big hits all that well in general. And I think it's got all the bottom out control that you need to hit the drops that you would hit on a 130 bike. And I think it deals with them just as well.
So you mentioned the relatively conservative geometry. One of those things, we can't have a Bible video without talking about C-tube angle.
Of course not.
74.5 on this one, not really blowing doors on anything, but it doesn't have to because it doesn't have that much travel in the rear. You're already nicely on top of the pedals on it.
Much as I love the move to steeper seat angles across the board, I got short femurs, I'm happy to see things getting up, 75, 76. As far as I'm concerned, if you're steeper than 73, it feels pretty good. And it's interesting because we do have a couple bikes that we've ridden here in this Bible that are really pushing the limits of what we know for steep seat angles. And we're like, well, are we reaching that upper bit there? But yeah, 74.5 for what this is and how the rest of the geometry works together, it feels right.
Yeah, I'd be perfectly happy taking this thing on like a long, like, you know, week-long bike packing adventure. But I'd also be perfectly psyched to ride it after work and just go for my local shred on it.
Yeah.
I think it's a super versatile, fun, efficient, and pretty dang capable bike.
Yeah.
You heard the man. It's a super versatile, fun, efficient, pretty dang capable bike. Yeah, well, to read the full review or to check out the other videos of the other bikes from this year's Bible of Bike tests, head on over to bikemag.com.